Your mind isn't broken, it's just tired of running. You know that feeling when your thoughts won't stop? When you're sitting still, but your mind keeps jumping from one worry to the next. You keep telling yourself to relax, but the more you try, the louder it gets. I know that feeling, it's exhausting, and the truth is, you don't need another quick fix or fake calm. You need to understand what's really happening inside your mind and how to quiet it for good. This video isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about learning how to take back control from the noise in your head. You'll discover real, simple ways to calm your thoughts, ease the tension in your body, and finally feel peace again. No fancy words, no overthinking, just real talk and real results. If your mind feels too loud, this is where you learn how to quiet it every time. Chapter 1. Understand what your mind is trying to protect. You know, one of the greatest battles we fight every single day doesn't happen in the world around us. It happens inside our own mind. When your thoughts begin to run wild, when worry grips your chest and you can't even explain why, it feels like something has taken over. The heart races, your breathing tightens, and everything seems louder and faster. In those moments, it's easy to believe that your mind has turned against you. But here's the truth. Your mind isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. It's doing its job, just in the wrong way. An anxious mind is not a broken mind. It's a mind that's been working overtime to keep you safe. The problem is, it doesn't know when to stop. It sees threats that aren't really there. It warns you of dangers that have already passed, and it shouts louder than the voice of peace. So before you can quiet it, you have to understand it. You have to understand what it's trying to protect. The human mind has one main goal: survival. From the moment you were born, your brain started learning what hurts and what feels safe. Every painful moment, every rejection, every loss became a lesson your mind stored for later. So when you feel anxious before a meeting, or when you overthink a conversation, or when you panic about your future, your mind isn't trying to ruin your life. It's trying to stop you from repeating pain. It's remembering something from your past and saying, "Watch out, that hurt before. Don't let it happen again." But the truth is, most of those old memories don't fit your life anymore. You've grown. You're stronger now. The things that used to hurt you can't destroy you anymore, but your mind doesn't know that yet. It's still protecting the child you used to be, not the adult you've become. So you have to teach it. You have to teach your mind that not every raised voice means danger. Not every unknown future means failure. Not every mistake means you're worthless. When anxiety hits, instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" try asking, "What is my mind trying to protect right now?" That simple question changes everything. Because now, instead of fighting your anxiety, you're listening to it. You're turning confusion into understanding. Maybe your mind is trying to protect you from embarrassment because long ago you were laughed at. Maybe it's trying to protect you from loss because you've been left before. Maybe it's trying to protect you from failure because you were punished for it once. Once you see what your anxiety is guarding, you can talk to it with reason. You might say to yourself, "I understand why you're afraid, but this is not that same situation. I can handle this." When you do that, your mind begins to relax. Because anxiety is like a guard that never got the message that the war is over. It's standing at the gate, armed and alert, waiting for an attack that isn't coming. Once you tell it the truth, it starts to lower its weapon. Most people try to quiet their anxious mind by forcing it to stop. They distract themselves, they push their thoughts away, they fight to think positive. But fighting your anxiety only makes it stronger. The real power comes from understanding. The more you try to silence it without listening, the louder it becomes. The more you ignore it, the harder it pushes back. But when you turn toward it with curiosity, when you say, "I see you, I understand why you're here," it begins to soften. You can start small. The next time your mind starts racing, pause, feel your feet on the ground, take a slow breath in and out. Then ask, "What are you trying to warn me about?" Don't judge the answer, just listen. You might hear, "I don't want to look foolish," or "I'm afraid they'll leave me," or "I don't want to fail again." And then gently respond, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm safe right now." You'd be amazed how much power that simple moment of awareness can bring. The goal isn't to erase anxiety completely. It's to understand it so well that it loses its grip on you. Anxiety only controls what you refuse to understand. Once you see it clearly, it can't scare you the same way anymore. That's why self-awareness is not just an idea, it's survival for the soul. Many people think strength means never feeling fear, never feeling anxious. But that's not strength. True strength is noticing your anxiety, understanding its message, and choosing calm anyway. It's saying, "I see my mind trying to protect me, but I don't need that protection right now." That's how you regain control, not by suppressing your emotions, but by mastering them. Think about how many times your anxiety has tried to stop you from doing something new, starting a business, speaking in public, asking for what you deserve. Every time it whispers, "What if you fail?" But anxiety doesn't know the difference between real danger and imagined risk. It uses the same alarm bell for both. So if you wait until you feel no fear, you'll never move. But when you understand that fear is just your mind trying to keep you safe, you can thank it and still take the step forward. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from understanding your mind instead of fearing it. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop drowning in thoughts and start guiding them. You realize that every anxious moment is a chance to practice calm. You stop running from your own mind and start walking beside it. Every person you admire, every calm leader, every confident speaker, none of them were born with a quiet mind. They learned to build one. They learned to see anxiety not as an enemy but as a signal. They learned to listen, to understand, to choose differently. And you can too. Start by noticing the patterns. What triggers your anxious thoughts? When do they show up most often? Who or what brings them out? Anxiety always follows a path. When you trace it back, you'll find the same few fears repeating themselves. The fear of not being enough, the fear of losing control, the fear of being judged. Once you know the pattern, you can interrupt it before it spirals. When your mind says, "You can't handle this," remind it of every time you've handled more than this before. When it says, "You're not ready," remind it that readiness grows through action. When it says, "Something will go wrong," remind it that even if it does, you'll adapt. Anxiety loses its power when you stop believing every word it says. Your thoughts are not facts. They are stories your brain tells to protect you. Some are useful, but many are outdated. The key is learning which ones to keep and which ones to rewrite. That's how you quiet your anxious mind. You stop letting it be the author of your life story. You take back the pen. Understand this. You cannot control every thought that appears, but you can choose which ones to believe. You can choose which ones deserve your attention. And the more you practice that choice, the easier it gets. Calm isn't a miracle that happens overnight. It's a skill you build, moment by moment, through awareness and patience. When you start understanding your mind, you stop being afraid of it. You start feeling compassion for yourself. You realize that anxiety isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign that you care deeply. You care about your future, your relationships, your performance, your purpose. Anxiety is just care that's lost direction. When you guide it with understanding, that same energy becomes focus, discipline, and strength. If you're tired of living in constant worry, if your thoughts never seem to rest, remember this: your mind isn't your enemy. It's just scared. It's been hurt before, and it's trying to protect you from getting hurt again. But you are not the same person who went through those old hurts. You're wiser now. You're capable now. You can tell your mind, "Thank you for caring, but I've got this." That is how healing begins, not by force, but by understanding. Every time you choose awareness over panic, your brain rewires itself. Every time you remind yourself you are safe, it learns a new pattern. You are teaching your nervous system that calm is not weakness, it's control. You are proving to yourself that peace is possible, even when the world feels uncertain. You don't quiet your anxious mind by waiting for life to get easier. You quiet it by learning how to stay steady no matter what happens. You stop chasing a perfect moment of peace and instead create peace in the moment you have. You become the calm in the storm, not because the storm ends, but because you've learned to understand the wind. The truth is, most people never take the time to truly understand their own mind. They live reacting to every thought, every fear, every doubt. But you don't have to. You can choose to study yourself the way you study your work, your goals, your ambitions. You can understand the patterns that drive your anxiety, and once you understand them, they lose their power. There is no trick, no secret formula, no shortcut. The answer is awareness. The moment you stop judging your anxious thoughts and start observing them, you begin to heal. You start to separate who you are from what your mind says. You begin to live with intention instead of reaction. And that's where freedom begins, because when you understand what your mind is trying to protect, you stop fighting it. You start guiding it. You teach it that safety doesn't always mean hiding, that peace doesn't always mean silence, and that growth is not the same as danger. You learn that the quiet mind isn't empty, it's focused, it's aware, it's strong. You have everything it takes to quiet your anxious mind, not by escaping it, but by understanding it deeply. Every anxious thought is just your mind's way of saying, "I want you to be safe." You can smile and say, "I am safe." And with that, the noise begins to fade. That's where your calm begins. Not out there in the world, but right here inside the understanding you build with yourself. Because once you understand your mind, you no longer fear it. You respect it. You guide it. And that's when it finally learns to rest. Chapter 2. Notice your thoughts before they start to control you. When your thoughts start spinning, it happens fast. One idea turns into another, and before you know it, you're caught in a storm you never saw coming. You begin to feel anxious, restless, uncertain. You wonder what went wrong. But it didn't start with how you feel. It started with what you thought. Every emotion, every reaction, every decision begins with a thought. And when you don't notice those thoughts early enough, they begin to control you. They run the show. They decide how you feel, how you speak, and how you live. Learning to notice your thoughts is not just some self-help advice. It's a survival skill. It's the difference between owning your mind and being owned by it. Your thoughts are powerful. They can lift you or crush you. They can guide you toward peace or drag you toward chaos. The only real control you have in life begins with what you choose to focus on inside your own head. And if you don't become aware of your thoughts, they will use that focus to create fear, stress, and confusion. Every person carries a constant stream of thoughts. Most of them are automatic, built from habits, beliefs, and experiences. They show up without your permission. That voice that says, "You're not doing enough," or "something bad will happen," is not reality, it's a thought. But thoughts feel real because they come with sensations. When you believe a stressful thought, your body reacts, your heart beats faster, your muscles tighten, and your breathing shortens. It's as if your body starts living a story that only exists in your head. That's why noticing your thoughts early is so important. It gives you space to choose. You can't stop a thought from appearing, but you can decide what to do when it does. Most people let their minds wander all day, never realizing how much damage those wandering thoughts create. They replay mistakes, they predict failure, they imagine worst-case outcomes, and the more attention they give those thoughts, the more real they become. The mind is like a magnifying glass. It enlarges whatever you focus on. Focus on fear, and it grows. Focus on peace, and it expands. Awareness is that moment when you realize you are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. Imagine catching a thought right when it appears. You notice it saying, "I'm going to mess this up." Instead of reacting, you pause. You look at it and say, "That's an old fear, not a fact." That pause is power. That awareness is freedom. When you can see a thought for what it is, it loses its grip on you. It's just a passing signal, not a command. The problem is, we live on autopilot. Our thoughts have been running the same programs for years, and we've become so used to them that we no longer question them. You might think, "I'm just an anxious person," or "I've always been like this." But that's not true. You're not anxious by nature. You've simply practiced anxious thinking for a long time. Awareness is how you begin to change that. You can't change what you don't notice. The first step to peace is to pay attention. Start by becoming curious about your inner dialogue. Notice how you speak to yourself. When something goes wrong, do you blame yourself or encourage yourself? When you face something uncertain, do you imagine failure or possibility? Most people don't even realize how cruel their thoughts have become. They talk to themselves in ways they would never talk to a friend. And over time, that self-talk shapes your emotional state. If you repeat a thought enough, your brain begins to believe it's the truth. So awareness means catching those patterns early. When you feel tension rise, ask yourself, "What was I just thinking?" Most of the time, you'll discover a thought like, "I'm not ready," or "I'm not good enough," or "This will go wrong." Simply noticing that thought begins to weaken it. You can observe it without obeying it. You can say, "That's just a thought passing through. It's not the truth." Every time you do that, you take a small step away from fear and a small step toward calm. You can practice this awareness anywhere, in the car, at work, while washing dishes. Just notice what your mind is saying. You might be surprised by how often it predicts failure or replays old pain. You might hear it worrying about things that haven't even happened. The goal is not to stop it, it's to notice it without getting lost in it. The moment you notice a thought, you're no longer trapped inside it. You've stepped outside and become the observer. There's a kind of peace that comes from observing instead of reacting. You start to realize that most of your anxiety isn't caused by life, it's caused by your thinking about life. The problem isn't always what's happening around you, it's what's happening inside you. Two people can experience the same situation. One feels calm, the other feels panic because of what they tell themselves about it. Your thoughts create your experience. To quiet your anxious mind, you must become a watcher of your thoughts. You must learn to pause before reacting, to question before believing. When a thought says, "I'll never get through this," ask, "Is that true?" When a thought says, "People will judge me," ask, "Can I really know that?" When a thought says, "This is too much," remind yourself, "I've handled more before." The more you question your thoughts, the less they control you. Awareness grows with repetition. At first, you'll only notice your thoughts after they've already taken over. You'll catch yourself in the middle of worry, realizing you've been lost in it for minutes or hours. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. The more you practice, the faster you'll catch it next time. Soon, you'll start noticing thoughts right as they appear. You'll see them rise like waves, and instead of drowning in them, you'll let them pass. This awareness transforms how you experience anxiety. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," you'll start saying, "I am noticing anxious thoughts." That one small change separates who you are from what you think. It reminds you that thoughts are temporary. They come and go, but you remain. You are the constant behind them. When you stop identifying with every thought, you begin to take back control. You realize you can choose which ones to believe and which ones to ignore. You can choose thoughts that empower you instead of those that weaken you. You can choose calm over chaos, patience over panic. Awareness gives you that choice. Every time you notice a thought, label it gently. That's fear. That's doubt. That's self-criticism. Don't fight it. Just name it. Naming creates distance. Once you see it clearly, it loses its power to control you. You can even thank it. "Thank you, mind, for trying to keep me safe, but I'm okay right now." This small act teaches your brain that not every thought deserves a reaction. Over time, your awareness will grow so sharp that you can feel a thought forming before it fully arrives. You'll sense the early signs, the quick breath, the tight chest, the restless energy, and you'll know your mind is about to spin a story. That's your cue to pause, breathe, return to the present moment. Remind yourself, "I can handle this thought without letting it handle me." When you live without awareness, your thoughts decide for you. They decide when you panic, when you doubt, when you freeze. But when you live with awareness, you decide. You can feel fear without letting it rule your next move. You can feel uncertainty without losing your center. That's how peace begins, not by erasing all thoughts, but by understanding them before they take control. Human psychology tells us that thoughts create emotions, and emotions drive behavior. If you change what you notice, you change how you feel, and that changes how you live. Awareness breaks the chain between thought and reaction. It gives you time to respond wisely instead of impulsively. That single second between thought and action is where your freedom lives. People often say they want peace of mind. What they really need is awareness of mind. Because once you can see your thoughts clearly, peace naturally follows. You don't have to chase it, it's already there beneath the noise. You just have to stop being dragged by every story your mind tells. This awareness also builds emotional strength. The more you observe your thoughts, the more confidence you gain in your ability to handle them. You stop fearing anxiety because you understand it. You realize you can witness a thought without falling apart. That realization changes everything. You stop running from discomfort. You stop trying to fix every feeling. You just stay present, steady, aware. You might think awareness sounds simple, but it takes practice. The mind loves movement. It doesn't like stillness. It wants to jump ahead, to solve, to compare, to judge. But you can train it. Start by taking short moments of awareness throughout your day. When you feel tension rising, stop and ask, "What am I thinking right now?" That question interrupts the automatic cycle. It brings you back to now. Awareness doesn't mean silence, it means clarity. You'll still have thoughts, but they won't dominate you. You'll still have fears, but they won't define you. You'll still have challenges, but they won't overwhelm you. Awareness doesn't erase difficulty, it gives you strength to face it. When you begin noticing your thoughts early, something amazing happens. You start to feel lighter. Your mind becomes less crowded. You realize most of what worried you was never real in the first place. You start enjoying the present moment more because you're not constantly lost in the future or past. You begin to see beauty in simple things again. A calm morning, a quiet breath, a clear sky. Awareness brings you home to yourself. Remember this truth. Your thoughts will always try to lead, but you don't have to follow. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears it. The sooner you notice that voice, the sooner you can decide whether to listen. Awareness is not a skill you practice once. It's a way of living. It's how you take back your life, one thought at a time. Every peaceful person you've ever met has learned this. They still have thoughts. They still have doubts, but they notice them quickly. They know how to see the wave coming before it hits. That's why they stay calm in chaos. They don't get pulled under. They've trained their awareness like a muscle, and that strength gives them freedom. You can do the same. It begins with one small step. Notice your thoughts before they start to control you. When they whisper fear, you listen but don't obey. When they shout worry, you breathe and stay present. When they tell you you're not enough, you remind yourself you always were. And each time you do that, the noise inside quiets a little more. That's how you build peace. Not by trying to stop your mind, but by understanding it before it takes over. Awareness is your anchor. The more you notice, the freer you become. And the day you truly see your thoughts for what they are, temporary, fleeting, harmless, you'll feel something you may not have felt in years. Calm that lasts.
Chapter 3. Accept the feeling instead of fighting it endlessly. There comes a moment when you have to stop running from what you feel. You can only push so long before exhaustion takes over. Anxiety grows when you resist it, when you try to crush it or hide from it. The more you fight an emotion, the stronger it becomes. The harder you push it away, the louder it screams for attention. What if the real solution isn't in fighting your feelings, but in allowing them to exist? What if peace begins the moment you stop trying to win a battle that never needed to be fought? Every anxious person has been taught to avoid discomfort. From childhood, we learn to distract ourselves when we feel scared or uneasy. We scroll through our phones, eat mindlessly, stay busy, or keep pretending we're fine. But pretending doesn't heal. It only postpones the truth. Emotions that are buried alive never die. They just find new ways to show up through tension, sleepless nights, or constant restlessness. Acceptance is not weakness. It's an act of courage. It's standing in front of what scares you and saying, I'm not going to run anymore. When anxiety rises, it feels like your body has betrayed you. Your chest tightens, your stomach knots, and your thoughts start spinning faster than you can control. In those moments, every instinct tells you to fight it. You try to push the feeling down, to breathe it away, to argue with it. But the truth is, you can't think your way out of anxiety. You can only feel your way through it. Acceptance doesn't mean you like it. It means you stop treating it like an enemy. Your body has wisdom. It reacts for a reason. When you accept what you feel, you begin to understand what your body has been trying to tell you all along. Maybe your anxiety is saying, I'm overwhelmed. Maybe it's saying, I need rest. Maybe it's saying, I don't feel safe here. Those messages can only reach you when you stop silencing them. Fighting your emotions blocks the lesson they carry. Acceptance opens the door to understanding. Think about how you treat a friend who's in pain. You don't yell at them to stop crying. You don't tell them their feelings are wrong. You sit beside them and listen. You offer comfort, not correction. Why not do the same for yourself? When you feel anxious, you can say, I know this feels awful, but I'm here with you. That simple act of compassion changes the tone inside your mind. It shifts you from judgment to support. You become your own safe place. Most people confuse acceptance with surrender, but they're not the same. Surrender is giving up. Acceptance is awareness without resistance. When you accept what you feel, you acknowledge reality. You stop pretending you're calm when you're not. You stop faking strength and start showing honesty. That honesty gives you power, because truth always does. It's exhausting to wear a mask every day, pretending everything is fine when it's not. Acceptance is removing the mask and allowing yourself to be human. Human beings are designed to feel a wide range of emotions: joy, fear, sadness, hope, anger, love, anxiety. None of them are wrong. They are signals from your inner world, guiding you toward growth. When you accept your emotions, you're not agreeing to stay stuck in them. You're simply letting them pass through. What you resist stays. What you allow moves. Anxiety often comes in waves. The first reaction is panic. The second is resistance. You think, I can't feel this right now. That thought adds another layer of tension. Now you're not only anxious, but you're anxious about being anxious. The moment you shift from fighting to allowing, something changes. The energy softens. You start to breathe deeper. Your body relaxes a little. You realize that the feeling isn't dangerous, it's just uncomfortable. And discomfort, when allowed, begins to dissolve. When you accept a feeling, you stop feeding it with fear. Emotions need resistance to survive. They thrive on your rejection. The moment you say, okay, I feel anxious right now, you remove their power. You're no longer trapped in denial. You're grounded in truth. That truth sets you free to handle the moment with clarity instead of panic. Acceptance also teaches emotional resilience. You start to trust yourself again. You learn that no emotion can destroy you if you face it. The storm may come, but you remain standing. That inner strength builds over time. Every time you choose to feel instead of fight, you grow stronger. You prove to yourself that you can handle life as it is, not just when it's comfortable, but when it's raw and uncertain. There's a deep peace that comes from saying, this is what I feel right now, and that's okay. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to fix it immediately. You just need to be present with it. That presence allows your nervous system to settle. Your body feels heard. Your mind feels understood. You begin to calm down, not because you forced calm, but because you allowed space for truth. When people fight anxiety, they often add mental stories to it. They say, this shouldn't be happening, or why can't I get over this, or something's wrong with me. These thoughts create more pain than the emotion itself. Acceptance breaks that cycle. When you stop labeling your feelings as good or bad, they lose their intensity. A wave of anxiety becomes just a wave. It rises, it falls, and it passes. You don't have to build a story around it. To practice acceptance, you must stay grounded in your senses. When you feel anxious, notice what's happening in your body. Feel your heartbeat. Notice the air moving through your nose. Observe the tension in your shoulders. You're not trying to fix anything. You're just noticing. The mind calms when you bring your focus to the body. The body calms when it's acknowledged. That's the beginning of acceptance. Acceptance also means giving up the constant search for perfection. Anxiety often comes from wanting life to be smooth, predictable, and safe all the time. But life isn't built that way. There will always be uncertainty, loss, change, and growth. Fighting that truth only adds more tension. Accepting it creates peace. You realize that calm doesn't mean the absence of problems. It means the presence of understanding. Every time you allow a feeling, you build emotional maturity. You no longer depend on external things to make you feel better. You realize you have everything you need to soothe yourself. You become your own caretaker instead of your own critic. That shift is powerful. It turns you from a victim of your emotions into the master of your response. Sometimes acceptance looks quiet. You may sit in your room feeling the discomfort move through your body and do nothing about it. That stillness is not weakness, it's awareness in action. It's you saying, I'm willing to sit with what is, without trying to escape it. Over time, that practice rewires your nervous system. Your brain learns that feelings are safe to experience. Your anxiety no longer triggers full panic. It becomes manageable energy that passes naturally. The hardest part of acceptance is patience. You can't rush emotions. They move at their own pace. But if you keep meeting them with resistance, they stay longer. Acceptance speeds up healing by removing friction. When you stop demanding that the feeling leave, it leaves on its own. That's the paradox. When you stop forcing peace, peace arrives. There's beauty in allowing yourself to be imperfect. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to smile when you don't feel like it. You don't have to hide your anxiety to seem strong. True strength is quiet honesty. It's saying, I'm not okay right now, but I know I will be. That truth carries dignity. It turns vulnerability into power. When you start practicing acceptance, you may notice emotions surface that you've ignored for years. Grief, shame, anger, fear. Don't be afraid of them. They've been waiting for your attention. They show up because they finally feel safe enough to be seen. Let them speak. Listen. Feel them fully. They will go once they've been acknowledged. Every emotion you face brings more light into your awareness. In time, you'll notice that acceptance doesn't just quiet anxiety. It deepens your entire experience of life. You start feeling more present, more alive. You appreciate moments of calm more deeply because you've learned to sit with discomfort. You stop judging yourself for being human. You stop measuring your worth by how perfectly you handle pain. You realize that peace is not found by escaping emotions, but by embracing them fully. Acceptance transforms fear into understanding. It turns panic into patience. It turns self-blame into compassion. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. One day you'll feel a familiar wave of anxiety rise, and instead of tensing up, you'll take a breath and say, it's okay, I know this feeling, I can handle it. That's the moment you know you've changed, not because anxiety disappeared, but because it no longer defines your life. The truth is, life will always bring moments that stir emotion. Uncertainty, loss, change, love. You can't stop the waves, but you can stop fighting them. You can learn to float with trust instead of thrashing with fear. Acceptance isn't the end of emotion. It's the beginning of peace. It's the quiet realization that what you feel is part of being alive, and that life in all its complexity is still worth embracing. So the next time anxiety shows up, don't ask how to get rid of it. Ask what it needs you to understand. Sit with it. Breathe with it. Let it stay for a while if it needs to. You'll find that when you stop running, it stops chasing. You'll see that what once felt unbearable becomes manageable. You'll experience that calm doesn't come from control. It comes from acceptance. And as you practice this, something changes deep within you. You begin to trust yourself again. You stop fearing your emotions because you know they won't break you. You stop pretending to be strong because you realize true strength is openness. You begin to move through life with grace instead of resistance. You become steady, even in uncertainty. You become at peace, not because everything is easy, but because you finally understand. You don't need to fight every feeling. You just need to accept it, allow it, and let it pass. That's when you finally discover what peace feels like. Not the peace that hides from pain, but the peace that walks through it and comes out strong. That's how you quiet your anxious mind, not by silencing it, but by listening with patience, accepting what it feels, and remembering that every emotion, no matter how heavy, is just a visitor passing through.
Chapter 4. Question the stories your anxiety keeps repeating daily. Every anxious mind tells stories. They sound like facts, but they're not.
They sound convincing because they're repeated over and over until you believe them. The anxious mind becomes a storyteller that never rests. It says things like, "You're not good enough, something bad will happen, or you can't handle this." And because those thoughts come dressed as truth, you rarely question them. They become your reality. But what if you stopped for a moment and asked, is this story actually true? What if most of what anxiety tells you is simply a lie you've listened to for too long? Anxiety doesn't just create feelings, it creates narratives. It builds patterns of thought that sound reasonable but are built on fear. Every time you face uncertainty, your mind reaches into its library of memories and finds the worst possible chapter. It says, "Remember when you failed before," or "Remember when they left." It strings together past pain and future worry into a story that keeps you small. That's what anxiety does. It writes scripts that make safety seem like staying the same. It wants you to avoid risk, to avoid embarrassment, to avoid discomfort. It disguises fear as logic. Most people live inside these anxious stories without realizing it. They build their choices, habits, and relationships around beliefs that were never examined. They avoid opportunities, not because they're incapable, but because their mind repeats, "You'll mess it up." They stay silent when they should speak, because anxiety whispers, "You'll say the wrong thing." They keep replaying the same fears every day until those fears start to feel like facts. Awareness begins when you stop accepting every story your anxiety tells and start asking better questions. When anxiety speaks, pause. Don't fight it. Just observe what it's saying. Write it down if you need to. You might notice patterns, different situations, same storyline. It might be, "People don't really like me," or "I'll never succeed," or "I always make mistakes." Once you see the pattern, you can begin to challenge it. You can look at it and ask, where did this story come from? Is there real proof that it's true? That's when the mind begins to open. Anxiety thrives on unchallenged thought. It loves certainty, the kind of certainty that keeps you afraid. But truth can only appear when you question. When you question an anxious thought, you interrupt the pattern. You create a pause between fear and belief. That pause is where your strength lives. Because now, instead of being controlled by the story, you're analyzing it. You're saying, "Hold on. I'm not sure that's accurate." That's not denial. It's awareness. You might notice that your anxious stories always sound familiar. They use the same tone, the same words, the same warning. That's because anxiety doesn't create new stories. It just replays old ones. It's like a broken record in your mind that has learned only one song. It doesn't care if it's true. It only cares if it keeps you alert. The problem is that constant alertness becomes your normal. You start waking up every day already bracing for something to go wrong. You live in a constant state of what if. But here's the truth. Most of what anxiety predicts never happens. Studies show that nearly all the things people worry about never come true. Yet the brain doesn't stop, because it's not looking for truth, it's looking for safety. So if fear keeps you alert, your brain thinks it's doing its job. But you can retrain it. You can teach it that questioning fear is safer than obeying it. When an anxious thought arises, imagine asking it like a curious friend, "Can you show me proof of that?" The anxious mind often goes silent in that moment because it has no real evidence. It works through repetition, not truth. For example, if you think, "I'll fail this presentation," you can pause and ask, "Have I failed every presentation before? Have I succeeded before? What's different now?" That small mental dialogue begins to weaken anxiety's authority. You're taking back the role of the narrator. Another powerful question is, who taught me this story? Often the roots of anxiety come from past experiences or influences, parents who worried excessively, teachers who criticized, moments where you felt unseen or rejected. Those moments planted beliefs that became stories. I must be perfect. I'm not safe if people are upset. I can't handle mistakes. But those beliefs are outdated. They were formed when you didn't know better. As an adult, you can rewrite them. You can say, that may have been true once, but it's not true now. That statement creates emotional distance. It allows growth where fear once ruled. The stories anxiety tells often sound like predictions. They start with what if, and end in disaster. What if they laugh? What if I lose everything? What if I never feel better? Those questions feel endless. But you can replace them with more empowering ones. Instead of what if I fail, ask, what if I succeed? Instead of what if something goes wrong, ask, what if things go right? The goal isn't to deny risk, it's to remind your brain that positive outcomes are also possible. The anxious mind forgets that. You must remind it. Questioning anxiety also means separating facts from interpretations. Anxiety takes neutral events and gives them dramatic meaning. A text that goes unanswered becomes their ignoring. The coworker's quiet mood becomes their angry with me. You create entire stories based on assumptions. The moment you catch yourself doing that, pause and ask, what else could this mean? That question opens perspective. It shows that your version of the story isn't the only one. That's how you begin to free yourself from emotional overreaction. When you question your anxious stories, something incredible happens. You start noticing reality more clearly. You see that life isn't as hostile as your mind suggests. You see that most people aren't judging you. They're too busy thinking about their own lives. You see that setbacks aren't proof of failure. They're part of learning. The world becomes less threatening when you stop letting anxiety define. The anxious mind is creative. It builds stories with vivid detail. It imagines scenarios with full emotion, so they feel real. That's why your body reacts as if danger is happening right now. But if you slow down, you can tell the difference between imagination and reality. You can say, this is just my mind creating a story. That recognition alone starts to break the cycle. The story loses its emotional power when you see it for what it is. A thought, not a fact. You can even use your awareness as an experiment. Write down your most common anxious predictions for a week. Then at the end of that week, check which ones actually happened. You'll likely find that almost none of them came true. Seeing that pattern builds trust in reality and weakens your reliance on fear. Over time, your brain learns that these stories aren't useful. They're outdated habits that can be replaced with more accurate thinking. Challenging anxious stories also means learning to tolerate uncertainty. The anxious mind craves control. It wants clear answers, guaranteed outcomes, and perfect safety. When it doesn't get them, it invents stories to fill the gap. That's why you assume the worst. It gives you the illusion of preparation, but you can't control life through worry. The only thing you can control is your response. When you accept uncertainty as a normal part of life, you take away anxiety's favorite weapon. You no longer need stories to feel safe. You trust yourself to handle whatever happens. Over time, questioning your anxious stories becomes a habit. You start catching them in real time. You recognize the same fearful language and say, I know this voice. It's my anxiety trying to protect me again. That recognition doesn't require anger or judgment. It's gentle awareness. You don't have to fight your thoughts. You just have to stop believing them automatically. When you no longer believe every anxious story, your mind begins to quiet down naturally. The key is consistency. You can't challenge anxiety once and expect silence forever. You must keep questioning, keep observing, keep replacing fear with truth. The brain learns through repetition, and every time you question a fearful thought, you're training it to think differently. Eventually, The stories lose their emotional punch. They may still appear, but they won't hold the same weight. You'll recognize them as old scripts, not current reality. It's also important to speak truth to yourself out loud. The anxious mind is loud, and sometimes you need to meet it with clarity. Say, I hear this thought, but it's not true. Say, I don't have to believe everything my mind says. The voice of truth grows stronger every time you use it. You're building a new internal dialogue that values calm over chaos, presence over panic, logic over fear. Questioning your anxious stories doesn't mean erasing them. It means outgrowing them. You start realizing that anxiety is just a habit of thinking, not a definition of who you are. You were not born with those fearful beliefs. You learned them, which means you can unlearn them. You can rewrite every story anxiety ever told you, replacing fear with trust, self-doubt with evidence, panic with perspective. Eventually, you'll see that the stories anxiety tells are never about the present. They're always about the past or the future. They replay old wounds or predict new ones. But the present moment, the one you're living right now, is usually peaceful. When you bring your awareness back to the present, anxiety loses its stage. You can't rewrite a story that doesn't exist here and now. The freedom you seek doesn't come from controlling every thought. It comes from questioning them with honesty. You begin to trust your own judgment again. You start to feel lighter, more in control, more grounded. You realize that you don't have to believe every story just because your mind tells it. Some stories are just echoes. Some are shadows of old fear. You can thank them for their intention to keep you safe and still choose a new one. Every time you question a fearful thought, you choose truth over illusion. You reclaim power from a mind that's been trying to protect you in all the wrong ways. You begin to live from awareness instead of reaction. That's the beginning of real peace. That's the moment when you stop being a character in your anxious story and start becoming the author of your life again. And as you keep practicing this day by day, moment by moment, you'll see your anxiety lose its influence. The stories will still appear, but they'll pass through like clouds in the sky. You won't chase them, you won't hide from them. You'll simply see them and let them go, because now you know the truth. Your anxiety is not the narrator of your life. And the story you choose to tell yourself can change everything.
Chapter 5. Practice being still until your body feels safe again. There comes a point when the mind has spoken enough, when thoughts have circled so many times that no new answer can be found, when anxiety has worn you down to the point that even thinking feels heavy. That's the moment when stillness becomes medicine. Not the kind of stillness that means doing nothing out of fear, but the stillness that says, I'm going to stop running for a moment and let my body remember that it's safe. An anxious mind often makes the body believe it's in danger even when life is calm. The heart races, the shoulders rise, and the breath becomes shallow. You might be sitting on your couch, but your body is acting as if it's facing a wild storm. That's what anxiety does. It confuses thought with threat. It convinces your body that the danger is real because your attention keeps feeding it. The only way to break that loop is to pause long enough for the body to realize there's no danger here right now. Stillness is not easy at first. The moment you slow down, the noise inside grows louder. You start to notice every sensation, every thought, every uncomfortable feeling that you've been avoiding. It feels like sitting in a room full of echoes, but if you stay, if you breathe through that discomfort, you'll discover something powerful. Your body begins to trust you again. You've stopped fighting it. You've stopped trying to outthink it. You're finally giving it permission to rest. The body remembers everything you've been through. Every time you were scared, every time you felt unsafe, every time you had to stay strong when you wanted to fall apart. It holds those moments in your muscles, in your breath, in your posture. So when anxiety shows up, your body isn't overreacting, it's remembering. That's why stillness is so healing. It gives the body a chance to release what it's been holding.
It teaches your nervous system that it doesn't have to be on guard all the time. When you practice being still, start simple. Sit down somewhere quiet. Put your hand on your chest and notice your breathing. You don't have to force it or control it, just watch it. Feel the air moving in and out. Feel your heart beating under your hand. Remind yourself, I am safe in this moment. The mind may keep trying to pull you away, whispering worries or replaying old memories. Each time it does, gently bring your attention back to the feeling of your hand, your breath, your body sitting here and now. That's how you retrain the mind to return to the present. Stillness isn't the absence of movement, it's the presence of awareness. You may still have thoughts, but you're no longer chasing them. You're watching them float by like waves instead of getting carried away. This is how the body begins to feel safety again, when it realizes it doesn't need to react to every thought the mind creates. In our world, we're taught that doing more means being better. We move from one task to another, filling every quiet moment with noise. But constant motion keeps your nervous system in survival mode. The body never gets a chance to reset. Stillness is how you remind it that it doesn't have to fight all the time. It's how you rebuild trust with yourself. You show your body that peace is not dangerous, that silence is safe, that slowing down is allowed. At first, your anxiety will resist stillness. It will tell you that stopping is unsafe, that you need to keep busy to stay in control. But control is an illusion. Stillness reveals that the moment you stop trying to manage everything, you discover that life doesn't fall apart, it softens. The noise doesn't disappear immediately, but it loses its power to scare you. You begin to realize that calm doesn't come from fixing every problem. It comes from being grounded enough to face them one at a time. When you sit in stillness long enough, you start to feel your body's signals more clearly. You notice how your shoulders rise when you're tense. You feel how your jaw tightens when you're holding back emotion. You become aware of the way your chest feels lighter when you exhale slowly. This awareness is healing in itself, because the moment you can feel what's happening, you can respond to it with care instead of panic. You can say, I feel tension, so I'll breathe deeper. You can say, my body feels unsafe, so I'll stay still until it remembers safety. The body learns through repetition, not reasoning. You can't just tell yourself to calm down. You have to show your body what calm feels like. Stillness is how you do that. When you practice it every day, even for a few minutes, your nervous system begins to shift. The constant alertness starts to fade. The muscles loosen. The breath deepens. The body starts to understand that it doesn't have to be on edge to survive. It's important to know that stillness doesn't mean silence from the world. It means silence within yourself. You can practice it anywhere, even in the middle of chaos. You could be sitting in traffic or standing in line at a store. All it takes is one deep breath and the decision to slow down your inner pace. The moment you choose to slow down inside, your body starts responding. The heart rate drops. The tension eases. You reclaim a sense of space inside yourself. Stillness reconnects you to your senses. When anxiety takes over, you leave your body and live in your head. You stop noticing the world around you. But when you return to stillness, you start to see again. You notice the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the rhythm of your breathing, the sound of your heartbeat. These simple sensations remind your body that it's alive and present, not trapped in old fear. That awareness is grounding. Being still also gives your emotions room to breathe. So often, anxiety builds because you never stop long enough to feel. You rush from one distraction to another, trying to stay ahead of discomfort. But emotions need space to move through you. When you're still, they rise, they speak, and then they fade. Stillness creates space for that natural flow. It teaches you that feelings are safe to experience, and that they don't last forever. If your body feels restless when you first try to be still, that's normal. Years of living in constant tension don't unwind in a day. Think of it like teaching a frightened animal that it's safe. You can't yell at it to relax. You have to be patient, consistent, and kind. The same goes for your body. The more you practice, the more it learns that calm doesn't mean danger, it means rest. When you practice stillness regularly, you begin to feel a new kind of confidence. You realize that you can be with yourself without needing to escape. That's a powerful shift. Anxiety often comes from believing that you can't handle what you feel. Stillness proves that you can. Every time you stay with a feeling instead of running, you show your body that it's capable of peace. You prove that safety is not something outside you. It's something you create within. Over time, stillness becomes less about effort and more about returning home. It's like remembering how to breathe again after holding your breath for too long. You find comfort in quiet. You start seeking moments of pause because they restore you. You stop needing constant distraction because peace becomes familiar. That's when your body truly feels safe again. The body doesn't heal through rushing. It heals through presence. Stillness is presence without pressure. It's being here right now with everything as it is. You don't need perfect surroundings. You don't need silence in the world to feel silence inside. You just need willingness to sit, to breathe, to feel, to let go. Each time you return to stillness, you repair the connection between your mind and your body. You remind them that they're on the same team. As your practice deepens, you'll notice that stillness changes your reactions to life. You stop overreacting to small things. You stop feeling like everything is urgent. You begin to respond instead of react. Your thoughts slow down enough for you to see clearly. You start noticing how often your anxiety was just noise created by speed. When the mind moves too fast, it imagines problems that don't exist. Stillness removes that illusion. It reveals what's real and what's not. Even in moments of chaos, stillness can become your anchor. You may feel panic rising, but you know how to pause. You take one breath and remind your body, we are safe right now. That single act shifts everything. The storm may still be there, but you're no longer being pulled by it. You're standing firm in awareness. That's the quiet strength that stillness builds. Unshakable calm in the middle of uncertainty. In time, the practice of stillness becomes something you look forward to. It's not a task, it's a reunion. A reunion with peace, with presence, with yourself. You start to notice that you don't crave escape anymore because you've made peace with being where you are. You no longer seek calm in external things, you find it inside. And when your body feels that safety consistently, anxiety has nowhere to live. It fades not because you forced it out, but because you stopped feeding it fear. There will still be days when anxiety visits. Stillness doesn't eliminate life's challenges, but it changes your relationship to them. Instead of reacting with panic, you respond with patience. You sit, you breathe, you wait. You know the feeling will pass, and you trust that you can handle it. That trust is what heals your nervous system over time. It's what transforms your anxiety into awareness. Stillness doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present, to meet yourself with understanding, to slow down enough to hear what your body has been trying to say. I'm tired of fighting. I just want to rest. And when you listen, truly listen, something inside you begins to soften. The tension melts. The breath deepens. The heart feels lighter. You start to sense safety, not because the world has changed, but because you have. That's the real power of stillness. It brings you back to yourself. Beneath the noise, beneath the worry, beneath the fear, there's a quiet presence that's always been there. Stillness helps you touch that place again. And once you feel it, you'll know that safety isn't something you have to chase. It's something you can return to anytime you choose to be still.
Chapter 6. Replace constant thinking with small, grounded actions now.
There's a moment in every anxious person's life when thinking becomes the very thing that keeps them stuck. You sit there trying to find the perfect answer, trying to think your way into calm, and the more you think, the worse you feel. The mind becomes a machine that won't shut off. It spins around every possibility, every what if, every mistake that might happen, every word that might be said. It convinces you that if you think just a little harder, you'll find certainty. But you never do. Because anxiety feeds on thought. It needs constant analysis to survive. The more time you spend in your head, the less power you have in your life. You can't think your way out of overthinking. The only way to quiet that storm is through grounded action. Action pulls you out of your head and puts you back into the world. It tells your mind, we're not just thinking about life anymore, we're living it. Anxiety thrives on mental movement and dies in physical presence. You've spent enough time running circles in your thoughts. Now it's time to move, even if the step is small. Anxious thinking often begins with good intention. You want to feel prepared, to make the right decision, to prevent pain. So you think, you analyze every scenario, every potential outcome. But what you're really doing is building fear through imagination. The more you think, the more risks you see, and the smaller you become. You convince yourself that you need more information before acting, more clarity before moving, more courage before trying. Yet none of those things arrive until you move first. Confidence doesn't come before action, it comes after. Grounded action means doing something small and real right where you are. When your mind is racing, you don't need to solve your entire life. You just need to take one step that brings you back to the present. Wash the dishes. Step outside and feel the air on your skin. Write down what's bothering you instead of replaying it in your head. Call someone you trust. Do something that involves your body, your senses, your breath. These tiny moments are not distractions, they're anchors. They pull you back into the reality your anxiety forgets. The anxious mind loves to live in the future. It plays endless movies about what might happen, but your body only exists here, in this moment. When you act, even in the smallest way, your mind and body reunite. That unity creates calm. You remind yourself that you're not just a collection of worries, you're a living person capable of movement. When you're caught in a spiral of thought, pause and ask yourself, what can I do right now that's within my control? Not later, not tomorrow, right now. Maybe you can take a walk, drink some water, stretch your body, tidy up a small space, send that message you've been avoiding, or simply take one slow, deep breath. Those actions seem small, but they matter because they shift your energy from analysis to engagement. Each small step breaks the illusion that you're powerless. You may feel resistance at first. Anxiety will tell you that you need to wait until you feel ready, calm, or certain. But that moment rarely comes. Readiness is created by doing, not by waiting. Even imperfect action carries more healing than endless thought. The brain needs evidence that life is safe, and action provides that evidence. When you do something tangible, you show your mind that the world isn't as dangerous as it believes. It's easy to think your way into fear, but impossible to think your way into peace. Peace is felt through experience, not theory. That's why grounded actions are so powerful. They create proof that life continues even when your mind screams otherwise. Each small movement becomes a quiet declaration. I'm not trapped in my thoughts. I'm here, and I'm capable. Anxiety often convinces you that big problems require big solutions, but healing is built on small consistencies. It's in making your bed when you'd rather stay in it. It's in showing up to your commitments, even when your mind tells you to cancel. It's in taking a shower when you feel overwhelmed. These are simple actions, but they interrupt the endless stream of thoughts that say, I can't. Every small act of doing weakens the voice of doubt. When you start acting, your focus shifts naturally. The mind can't fully spiral while the body is engaged. That's why creative work, exercise, or even cleaning can bring relief. Your attention is absorbed by something real, not imagined. The hands moving, the feet walking, the senses noticing. These things pull you out of the fog. You stop asking, what if, and start saying, what now? That's the language of action. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is simplify the moment. If your mind says, I have too many problems, pick one, just one. Decide what one small thing you can handle today. Maybe it's making a call, finishing a task, or taking care of your body. When you act on one thing, your brain starts to calm because it sees movement instead of chaos. The impossible becomes manageable when it's divided into small pieces. Action also builds trust in yourself. Overthinking comes from fear of making the wrong move. You don't trust your ability to handle mistakes, so you freeze. But when you take small actions, you prove to yourself that you can adapt. Maybe not everything goes perfectly, but you survive it, you learn, adjust, grow. That self-trust is the foundation of peace. The more you trust yourself, the less control anxiety has over you. There's a deep sense of relief that comes from doing something instead of analyzing everything. Even the smallest motion creates progress. You start to see that life moves forward when you do. You stop waiting for the perfect mindset or the perfect plan. You realize that clarity comes from engagement. Every action teaches you something your thoughts never could. When you live in your head too long, you lose touch with reality. You forget that the world exists beyond your thoughts. You stop noticing simple joys because you're buried in scenarios that haven't happened. Grounded action brings you back. You begin to see details again, the color of the sky, the sound of your footsteps, the taste of your food. Presence returns through movement. It's not about staying busy just to avoid thinking. There's a difference between distraction and grounded action. Distraction numbs you. Action connects you. When you're grounded, every small act becomes a conscious choice, not an escape. You're not running from your mind, you're guiding it back to stability. Try this the next time your thoughts start to spiral. Stop whatever you're doing and take one deliberate breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Then ask yourself, what is the smallest helpful thing I can do right now? It might be organizing your space, journaling your feelings, or simply sitting upright and breathing slower. The act itself doesn't have to be significant. What matters is that it's real and present. Each time you do this, you interrupt the loop of worry. You'll notice that your energy changes when you act. The same body that felt heavy with anxiety begins to feel lighter. You gain a sense of control. Not because you fixed everything, but because you're no longer frozen. Movement creates momentum. You begin to see that calm isn't something you wait for, it's something you build. One action at a time. Overthinking often disguises itself as problem solving. The mind says, I just need to figure this out, but what it's really doing is avoiding discomfort. Grounded action exposes that avoidance. It forces you to meet reality instead of escaping into thoughts. Reality is simpler than your fears make it seem. Most of the time, life isn't asking for a perfect decision, it's asking for a next step. Action also reconnects you to purpose. Anxiety narrows your focus until all you see is the problem. You lose sight of what matters, but when you start doing small meaningful things, writing, helping someone, creating, learning, you remind yourself that you're more than your worries. Purpose expands your perspective. It pulls you out of the tiny world inside your mind and back into the vastness of living. The more you replace thinking with doing, the more balanced you feel. The anxious mind will still try to pull you back, whispering that you haven't done enough, or that something could still go wrong. But you'll begin to notice those thoughts for what they are, just noise. You don't have to argue with them, you just keep moving forward. Anxiety loses its grip when it realizes you won't stop your life for it. This doesn't mean you should rush through every moment or fill your day with endless activity. Grounded action is about intention, not speed. It's about moving at a pace that keeps you connected to reality. It's about feeling your hands when you wash the dishes, hearing your breath when you walk, noticing your surroundings when you speak to someone. These are small, steady actions that remind your nervous system you're safe. Some days, your grounded action might be as simple as getting out of bed. Other days, it might be pursuing something new. What matters is that you move in alignment with what helps you grow instead of what keeps you stuck. Each small action is like a vote for peace over panic. One by one, they rebuild your trust in yourself and in life. When you replace constant thinking with grounded action, you rediscover your strength. You realize that you can handle far more than your anxious mind ever believed. You learn that progress isn't about grand gestures, it's about consistency. The anxiety that once ruled your thoughts starts to fade into the background because your attention now belongs to what's real. At the end of the day, it's not about controlling every thought or emotion. It's about remembering that life happens through action. You were never meant to live entirely inside your head. You were meant to move, to connect, to experience. The mind will always try to return to thinking, but now you know the antidote: action, right now, right here. So when you catch yourself lost in endless thought, stop searching for the perfect answer. The perfect answer is movement. Do one small thing that brings you back into your body and into your life. That's where peace begins, not in the overthinking, but in the doing. Because when you act, your mind learns something profound. It's safe to stop worrying and start living again.
Chapter 7. Learn how your triggers shape the noise inside you. Every person carries a set of triggers, emotional buttons that, when pressed, awaken something inside you that feels bigger than the moment you're in. A tone of voice, a facial expression, a sudden silence, a reminder of failure. All these can turn a calm mind into a storm within seconds. Anxiety doesn't always come from nowhere. It's often a reaction to something familiar, something old, something unresolved. The noise you hear inside when you're anxious is not random. It's shaped by your past, by experiences that taught your body and mind what danger feels like. To quiet that noise, you have to understand what sets it off. A trigger is not weakness, it's information. It's your body trying to tell you, this feels like something that once hurt me. It doesn't always mean you're in real danger. It means a memory has been reawakened. The mind stores pain like a file marked "Remember this," and when something similar happens, it opens that file again, even if today's situation is completely different. That's why your reactions sometimes feel stronger than they should. You're not just responding to what's happening now, you're reacting to everything that moment reminds you of. The anxious noise inside you often follows patterns. You might notice it gets louder when you're criticized, when you're alone, when plans change, or when someone withdraws affection. These moments connect to old fears. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being powerless. They light up neural pathways that have been reinforced over time. But once you understand your triggers, you begin to separate the past from the present. You realize that not every uncomfortable feeling is a threat. Some are simply echoes. Start by observing your reactions instead of judging them. When anxiety spikes, pause and ask yourself, what just happened before this feeling rose? Maybe someone interrupted you. Maybe a noise startled you. Maybe you read a message that felt cold or unclear. Write it down. Patterns will start to appear. You'll notice that certain people, situations or topics stir up the same emotional wave. Awareness is the beginning of understanding. Once you can name your triggers, they lose some of their mystery. They become things you can work with, not forces that control you. Your body often senses a trigger before your mind does.
The heart quickens, the stomach tightens, your breathing changes. These sensations are clues. They signal that something inside you has connected the present moment to a past discomfort. When you catch that feeling, don't rush to escape it. Stay with it long enough to see what it's trying to tell you. You might remember an old experience, a time you felt ignored, unsafe or unworthy. Those memories shape the noise inside you because they've never been given the chance to heal. Healing begins with acknowledgement. You can't change what you refuse to face. When you see your triggers clearly, you can talk to yourself with compassion instead of criticism. You can say, "This reaction makes sense. It comes from an old wound." That simple statement shifts you from self-judgment to self-awareness. You stop labeling yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as human. Triggers are not flaws, they're reminders of places where you once needed comfort but didn't receive it. Each trigger has a story attached to it. Maybe when you were younger, someone's anger meant danger. Maybe being ignored felt like abandonment. Maybe mistakes led to punishment instead of understanding. Your mind recorded those experiences and learned, this is what it feels like to be unsafe. Now, whenever life presents something similar, your body reacts as if it's happening again. That's why anxiety can feel so immediate and overwhelming. Your brain doesn't differentiate between memory and reality, it only recognizes the feeling. Understanding your triggers doesn't mean avoiding them. It means responding differently when they appear. Avoidance keeps your world small, awareness expands it. When you recognize a trigger in real time, you can pause before reacting. You can take a breath and remind yourself, this is not the same situation. I am safe now. That one moment of awareness interrupts the automatic chain reaction that fuels anxiety. It gives you control where before there was only chaos. The noise inside you gets louder when you ignore it. When you pretend not to be bothered, when you hide behind distractions, the triggers don't disappear. They show up in unexpected ways. Irritability, exhaustion, disconnection, sudden worry. The body keeps score of every unprocessed emotion. The only way to lower the volume of that internal noise is to listen to what it's trying to say. Sometimes understanding triggers means revisiting moments you'd rather forget. It's not easy work, but it's honest work. You may find that your strongest triggers come from times you felt powerless. Times when you couldn't speak, couldn't choose, couldn't protect yourself. Those moments live in your nervous system, shaping how you respond to stress now. But by revisiting them with awareness, you teach your body that those moments are over. You show it that you're not trapped there anymore. Practical awareness can help you build calm around your trigger. When you notice one appearing, focus on your breath first. Breathing grounds the body before the mind can spin stories. Feel your feet touching the ground. Notice your surroundings. Say to yourself, this feeling is old. This moment is new. That short statement reorients your brain to the present. The more you practice it, the faster your nervous system learns to calm down after being triggered. It's also important to remember that triggers are deeply personal. What affects one person may not affect another. Comparing your reactions to someone else's only adds shame. Your experiences are yours alone. The goal is not to eliminate all triggers, it's to build enough understanding that when they appear, you don't collapse under them. You remain grounded. You recognize the noise for what it is, a signal, not a sentence. Over time, you'll notice that understanding your triggers changes how you see others too. You'll begin to realize that everyone carries invisible reactions shaped by their own history. That awareness builds empathy. You stop taking everything personally. You start seeing the human being behind every outburst, every moment of defensiveness. The more you understand your own patterns, the easier it becomes to navigate the emotions of others without losing your scent. The process of learning about your triggers requires patience. It's not about analyzing every emotion, but observing with kindness. Sometimes the reason behind a reaction won't be clear right away, and that's okay. What matters is that you're paying attention. Each moment of awareness weakens anxiety's grip because it breaks the pattern of unconscious reaction. There's a moment when you begin to hear the noise inside differently. At first it sounds like chaos. Too many thoughts, too many feelings, too much but as you understand your triggers, the noise becomes less confusing. You start recognizing the voices within it. You hear the part of you that's scared, the part that's trying to protect, the part that still wants comfort. You realize that the noise isn't the enemy. It's communication. It's your system's way of asking for care. When you meet that noise with compassion, something shifts. Instead of trying to silence it, you listen. Instead of calling yourself overreactive, you ask, what part of me needs reassurance right now? That internal dialogue softens anxiety because it replaces judgment with understanding. You become your own comfort instead of waiting for someone else to provide it. Learning your triggers also helps you create healthier boundaries. Once you know what environments, people, or habits increase your anxiety, you can make choices that support your peace. You stop walking into situations that consistently drain you. You communicate your needs more clearly. You stop apologizing for protecting your energy. Boundaries are not avoidance. They're self-respect. They give you space to heal without constant reactivation. When you start responding differently to triggers, your brain begins to rewire itself. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you create new pathways. You're teaching your nervous system that calm is possible, even when discomfort arises. Over time, those new patterns become stronger than the old ones. The trigger may still appear, but it no longer sends you into panic. You recognize it, breathe through it, and move forward. That's what healing looks like. Not erasing sensitivity, but managing it with wisdom. Your triggers can become teachers if you let them. Each one shows you where you still carry pain that wants attention. Each one points toward an opportunity for growth. When you stop running from them, you begin to see them as invitations instead of threats. They're not here to destroy you, they're here to guide you back to understanding. It's also worth remembering that progress isn't linear. Some days you'll handle a trigger with ease, other days it'll catch you off guard. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. Growth is built on awareness, not perfection. Every time you come back to understanding after a reaction, you're strengthening your emotional resilience. The more you learn about your triggers, the quieter the noise inside becomes. The chaos turns into clarity. You stop feeling like a victim of your emotions and start seeing yourself as the observer of them. You begin to anticipate what might unsettle you and prepare with calm instead of fear. That preparation isn't control. It's mindfulness. It's living with awareness instead of reaction. Eventually you realize that the goal isn't to eliminate every trigger, but to become so connected to yourself that no trigger can shake your foundation. You still feel the wave of emotion, but it doesn't drown you. You hear the noise, but it doesn't define you. You understand it for what it is, a signal from within, reminding you to care for yourself, to slow down, to breathe, to return home to your peace. That's the quiet victory of awareness. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's steady, deep and real. When you know your triggers, you stop fearing them. You stop feeling powerless. You begin to live with a new kind of confidence, the kind that comes from knowing that whatever happens, you understand yourself well enough to face it. You are no longer reacting blindly to life, you're responding with wisdom. The noise inside doesn't need to be silenced completely. It needs to be understood. Once you learn how your triggers shape that noise, you'll find that peace isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of understanding. And when you live from that place, your anxiety loses its power. The world doesn't change, but you do. You move through life with more awareness, more calm, and more control over your inner world than ever before.
Chapter 8.
Trust yourself enough to pause before reacting fearfully. There is a quiet power that lives inside the pause. It's the space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. In that small, invisible gap lies freedom. Most people don't see it because fear moves faster than awareness. Something triggers your anxiety, and before you even realize it, you've already reacted. Your heart races, your voice rises, your thoughts spin. You say or do things you later regret. You fall into the same pattern over and over again, not because you're weak, but because fear always wants to be first. To change that, you must learn to pause. But more than that, you must trust yourself enough to believe that pausing won't destroy you. The anxious mind tells you that if you don't react right away, something bad will happen. It makes urgency feel like survival. It whispers that silence means danger, that hesitation means failure, that waiting means losing control. So you rush. You speak before you think. You defend before you understand. You assume before you see. All of this comes from a lack of trust. Trust in yourself, in your strength, in your ability to stay calm even when life feels uncertain. But when you trust yourself enough to pause, everything changes. You begin to realize that reacting fearfully has never truly protected you. It has only drained your peace. Pausing is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the decision to give yourself one moment of space before letting fear take the wheel. In that space, clarity grows. Your breathing slows, your perspective widens. You begin to see that not every situation demands an instant reaction. Some things just need your calm presence. Some moments only need understanding, not defense. The pause is where you move from impulse to intention. It's where you stop being controlled by fear and start choosing from awareness. Trusting yourself enough to pause means believing that you can handle whatever feelings arise in that silence. Fear will try to convince you that if you don't act immediately, the discomfort will overwhelm you. But when you allow yourself to feel that discomfort fully, to breathe through it instead of running from it, you teach your body that fear doesn't have to be obeyed. You learn that emotion is energy, and it passes when you stop feeding it reaction. That's how calm is built, not by suppressing fear, but by sitting still long enough to let it lose its momentum. Think about the last time you reacted from fear. Maybe you sent a message too quickly, said something you didn't mean, avoided a conversation, or overthought a situation until it became unbearable. In the moment it felt necessary. Fear always makes its reaction seem urgent. But later, once your mind cleared, you saw things differently. You realized that the situation wasn't as dangerous or hopeless as it seemed. That's the difference between reaction and reflection, the difference between chaos and control. If you had paused just a little longer, you would have responded from reason, not panic. When you pause, you give yourself permission to see reality as it is, not as your fear imagines it. You might still feel anxiety in your chest, but now you can observe it instead of obeying it. You can say to yourself, I feel fear, but that doesn't mean I'm in danger. I can wait before I act. That statement is powerful because it puts you back in charge of your emotions. It reminds your nervous system that you're safe enough to stay still. Every time you do this, you build trust with yourself. You prove that you can experience fear without being consumed by it. Pausing is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right thing at the right time. It's about responding with awareness instead of reacting with instinct. It's the space that allows you to think, to breathe, to choose differently. Fear acts fast, but truth unfolds slowly. When you slow down, you give truth a chance to catch up. You may not realize it, but your nervous system reacts to threat before your mind even interprets it. That's why your heart can start racing before you've even identified what's wrong. When you practice pausing, you're retraining your nervous system. You're teaching it that not every discomfort means danger. You're showing it that a calm response can be safe too. Over time, this rewires your automatic reactions. What once triggered panic begins to trigger patience. Trusting yourself to pause takes practice. Start with small situations, the ones that usually make you tense or impatient. Maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, or you receive a text that feels dismissive. Notice the first wave of emotion. Instead of reacting, breathe. Count slowly. Remind yourself that not everything requires an instant answer. Ask, what's the most peaceful response I can choose right now? You don't have to get it perfect. You just have to interrupt the old pattern. That interruption is where transformation begins. When you pause, you create room for wisdom. Fear clouds your mind with stories about what could go wrong. But wisdom sees things as they are. The pause clears that fog. It allows understanding to enter. Sometimes, after pausing, you'll realize that you misread the situation entirely. The person wasn't angry, they were tired. The message wasn't rejection, it was short. The problem wasn't as urgent as your body believed. How many arguments, mistakes, and sleepless nights could be avoided by giving yourself that small space before reacting? But here's what makes the pause difficult. You must be willing to trust yourself even when you don't have all the answers. The anxious mind craves certainty. It wants to act quickly to restore control. But real control comes from patience, not panic. You must remind yourself, I can sit in uncertainty and still be okay. That's one of the most powerful beliefs you can develop. It tells your brain that you are no longer ruled by fear's timeline. You move on your own terms now. Pausing also protects your relationship. Fear-driven reactions often come out as defensiveness, anger, or withdrawal. You say things that come from pain, not truth. But when you pause, you create space for empathy. You give others the benefit of the doubt. You listen before responding. You hear what's being said instead of what you're afraid of hearing. That's how understanding deepens, through patience, not speed. Every time you pause before reacting, fearfully, you rewrite your emotional habits. You're teaching your mind that you can survive without reacting. You're showing yourself that fear can visit, but doesn't have to take control. This builds self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of peace. When you know you can rely on yourself to stay grounded, anxiety loses its urgency. The pause becomes your safe space, a place where calm gathers before you step forward again. You can also use the pause as a tool for clarity. When you feel overwhelmed, step back for a moment. Don't rush to fix everything. Sit quietly, breathe, and ask, what's really happening here? Sometimes beneath fear, there's sadness. Beneath anger, there's hurt. Beneath anxiety, there's a longing for safety or certainty. When you pause long enough, you can see what's truly driving your emotions. You stop reacting to the surface and start healing the root. It's important to understand that pausing doesn't mean suppressing emotion. You're not denying what you feel. You're holding space for it. You're saying, I can feel this fully without letting it define me. That's real strength. Most people believe strength means acting immediately. But true strength is the ability to stay present in discomfort without losing balance. When you first start practicing the pause, it might feel unnatural. Fear will whisper, you're wasting time, you need to act now. But keep breathing, keep trusting. The discomfort of waiting is temporary. What comes after it is peace that lasts. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. One day you'll notice that your reactions are slower, your thoughts clearer, your emotions steadier. That's how self-trust grows. Quietly, one pause at a time. Trusting yourself enough to pause also means forgiving yourself when you don't. There will be moments when fear still gets ahead of you, when you react quickly and wish you hadn't. That's part of the process. Awareness doesn't erase old habits overnight. When that happens, reflect without shame. Ask, what was I afraid of in that moment? Understanding that fear gives you insight for next time. Growth doesn't happen in perfection. It happens in reflection. Eventually you'll come to see that the pause isn't an interruption of your life. It's an enhancement of it. It brings quality to your thoughts, patience to your words, and grace to your choice. It teaches you that not every emotion deserves a reaction, and not every reaction deserves your energy. You begin to conserve your peace instead of spending it on fear. You move through life slower but surer, calmer but stronger. The pause is where maturity lives. It's where wisdom breathes. It's where peace begins to replace panic. It's in that space that you remember who you are beyond your fear. A person capable of strength, clarity and calm. When you trust yourself enough to pause, you're no longer running from fear. You're leading yourself through it. That's what true emotional mastery looks like. Each time you pause before reacting fearfully, you're not just calming one moment, you're reshaping your entire relationship with anxiety. You're proving to yourself that fear doesn't have to dictate your life anymore. You're creating space for better choices, healthier relationships, and a quieter mind. You're learning that peace isn't found in control. It's found in trust. The pause is your power. It's small, silent, and often invisible to the world, but it's the difference between chaos and clarity. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Fear may still visit, but now you know you don't have to answer right away. You can breathe, wait, and choose, and in that simple act, you transform fear into wisdom, reaction into response, anxiety into calm. That's how you begin to live with peace that lasts. Not because life gets easier, but because you've learned to trust yourself in the moments that used to undo you. You pause, you breathe, you stay present, and you remember that you are stronger than any fearful. In that moment, you are free.
Chapter 9. Build emotional strength by facing what you avoid. Every anxious mind has one common habit. It avoids discomfort, confrontation, uncertainty, risk, and even success. It avoids anything that feels like it could bring emotional pain. But what most people never realize is that avoidance is the silent fuel that keeps anxiety alive. The things you run from don't disappear, they wait. They sit quietly in the corners of your mind, growing stronger every time you turn away. The more you avoid what scares you, the smaller your world becomes. True emotional strength doesn't come from avoiding fear, it comes from facing it. Avoidance feels safe in the moment. When you push away what you don't want to feel, you get temporary relief. The thought passes, the tension drops, the heart slows. For a few minutes you feel like you're in control. But the price of that momentary relief is long-term anxiety. Because when you avoid something, you teach your brain that the avoided thing is dangerous. You reinforce the idea that you can't handle it. Over time, that message becomes automatic. You stop trusting yourself to face life directly, and every challenge begins to look like a threat. Facing what you avoid isn't about forcing yourself into pain, it's about reclaiming your confidence. It's about showing your mind that fear doesn't define your limits. Every time you face something uncomfortable, you prove to yourself that you're capable. You expand your tolerance for uncertainty. You build emotional muscle. Strength isn't about feeling no fear. It's about walking forward even when fear is present. Think about the things you avoid. Maybe it's a difficult conversation you've been postponing. Maybe it's opening your bills, checking your messages, or making a decision you've delayed for months. Maybe it's looking at yourself honestly in the mirror and admitting what's not working in your life. Avoidance comes in many forms: procrastination, distraction, overthinking, denial, even pretending to be fine when you're not. Every form of avoidance says the same thing: I don't trust myself to handle this. But you can learn to. Emotional strength begins when you turn toward what you fear, instead of away from it. Start small. You don't have to face everything at once. Pick one thing you've been avoiding and make a plan to meet it. If you've been avoiding a difficult talk, write down what you want to say. If you've been avoiding a task, break it into the smallest possible steps and start with one. The goal is not perfection, it's momentum.
Each step toward what you fear teaches your brain a new truth. I can do hard things and survive. The first few times you face something uncomfortable, your anxiety will spike. That's normal. Your mind will resist. It will tell you to wait, to prepare more, to think it through again. But courage doesn't wait for comfort. Courage grows through discomfort. The more you stay present with the feeling, the less power it has over you. What you face consistently becomes familiar, and what's familiar becomes manageable. That's how fear loses its edge, through exposure, not escape. Avoidance creates a life filled with unfinished moments. You might think you're protecting yourself, but you're really building invisible walls that keep you stuck. When you face what you've been avoiding, those walls begin to fall. You start to feel lighter, clearer, more alive. You stop carrying the weight of what if, and start discovering the power of what now. The act of facing what you fear doesn't just reduce anxiety, it restores your sense of self. Most people overestimate how painful it will be to face something, and underestimate how strong they'll feel afterward. The mind imagines disaster, but reality is usually gentler. You might stumble, you might feel shaky, but you'll also feel free. Every time you do something you were afraid to do, you build emotional evidence. That evidence becomes confidence. You stop needing reassurance from others because you've proven to yourself, again and again, that you can handle life as it comes. Avoidance keeps you in a cycle of fear and control. You spend so much time trying to manage what you can't feel that you never truly live. Facing what you avoid breaks that cycle. It reminds you that pain and growth often share the same doorway. On the other side of fear is always clarity. On the other side of discomfort is strength. You just have to walk through. Facing what you avoid doesn't mean ignoring your feelings. It means respecting them. It means saying, I can feel fear and still move forward. When you approach fear with curiosity instead of judgment, it begins to shift. You might even start to notice that fear isn't as solid as it seemed. It's often just energy, passing through your body, waiting to be acknowledged. Once you let yourself feel it without running, it begins to fade. Emotional strength isn't built in grand moments, it's built in small, ordinary ones. It's built when you answer the call you've been putting off, when you speak the truth you've been holding back, when you show up even though your mind tells you to stay home. Each time you do, you prove to yourself that fear doesn't have the final say. That's what builds resilience. Not avoiding the storm, but learning to stand in the rain until it passes. Avoidance drains your confidence because it tells your mind that you're powerless. Action restores it because it proves you're capable. You don't need to eliminate fear. You need to act alongside it. The most successful and grounded people in the world feel fear too. They've just learned to move through it. They've stopped treating discomfort as danger and started treating it as direction. The things you avoid often point to the areas where your greatest growth is waiting. Start viewing discomfort as information. If something makes you uneasy, ask yourself why. What belief or memory is being challenged? What outcome are you afraid of? When you look beneath the surface, you'll usually find that avoidance isn't about the situation itself, it's about the story you've attached to it. Maybe you're not avoiding the task, you're avoiding failure. Maybe you're not avoiding the person, you're avoiding rejection. Once you name the real fear, you can begin to heal it. You can ask yourself, is this fear based on fact or assumption? Has avoiding it ever really helped? The answers will guide you back to truth. There's also something deeply healing about choosing to face what you avoid on your own terms. You no longer wait for life to force you into change. You lead yourself into it. That shift from avoidance to action turns fear into fuel. You stop reacting and start deciding. You realize that bravery isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet and steady. It's the calm voice that says, this matters to me and I'm ready to face it. You'll notice something powerful once you begin this process. The very things that scared you start to feel smaller. The conversation you dreaded becomes easier. The project you delayed starts to flow. The feelings you feared begin to lose intensity. Why? Because fear thrives in the unknown. When you face what you avoid, you take away its mystery. You replace imagination with reality, and reality is always more manageable than fear's exaggeration. Facing what you avoid also deepens your relationship with yourself. You stop hiding behind distractions and start meeting yourself honestly. You begin to see your own patterns clearly. The excuses, the hesitations, the ways you try to escape discomfort. That awareness doesn't make you weak, it makes you free. You can't change what you don't see. Facing yourself fully, without judgment, is one of the bravest things you'll ever do. As you grow stronger, you'll begin to notice that your definition of hard changes. What used to terrify you becomes normal. What used to drain you becomes manageable. That's the gift of facing fear. It transforms your limits. You stop being afraid of fear. You stop needing everything to be easy. You start trusting your ability to endure. That trust is emotional strength in its purest form. There will be moments when you slip back into avoidance. That's okay. The goal isn't to be fearless, it's to be aware. Every time you catch yourself avoiding, you have a choice: continue the old pattern or create a new one. Even if you take one small step toward the thing you fear, you're breaking the cycle. That's how real change happens, not in a single leap, but in repeated choices to face what you once fled. When you live a life of avoidance, anxiety grows louder, because it's trying to warn you about all the things you've left unresolved. But when you face those things, anxiety quiets down. It no longer needs to shout because you're finally listening. You're meeting life directly, and your mind can relax knowing you're no longer running. At some point you'll realize that everything you were afraid to face was never as painful as the fear of avoiding it. Avoidance keeps you trapped in anticipation. Facing what you fear gives you closure. It gives you confidence. It gives you peace. The energy you once used to avoid life becomes the energy you use to build it. Building emotional strength is not about becoming invincible. It's about becoming honest. It's about showing up fully, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about telling yourself, I can do this, even if I'm afraid. The moment you stop letting fear decide for you, you begin to live from courage. That courage grows each time you face something you once ran from. Life doesn't reward avoidance, it rewards awareness. The people who grow, heal and find peace aren't the ones who never feel fear, they're the ones who stopped letting it control their lives. You can be one of them. Every time you turn toward what you avoid, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. You gather strength, not because the world changed, but because you did. The next time you feel yourself avoiding something, pause, take a breath, ask, what am I afraid will happen if I face this? Then take one small step anyway. Don't wait until you feel ready. Readiness is built through doing. You'll stumble, you'll sweat, you'll doubt, but you'll also grow stronger. The fear will lessen. The avoidance will fade. And one day you'll look back and realize that the things that once ruled your mind no longer control you. That's what emotional strength really is, the quiet confidence that comes from meeting life head-on. You stop running. You stop hiding. You stop living with courage and self-trust. And when you do, the anxious mind that once kept you trapped begins to rest, because now, it knows something it didn't before. You're not running from fear anymore. You're walking through it, one brave step at a time.
Chapter 10. Live each moment as proof that you are enough. There comes a time in every person's life when the endless striving, comparing and doubting begins to wear you down. You reach a point where you start to ask yourself, when will it ever feel like enough? Enough effort, enough success, enough growth, enough progress. That question quietly sits inside the anxious mind like a shadow that never fades. It whispers that no matter what you achieve, you're still behind, that you have to do more, be more, prove more. But the truth is,
The chase never ends, because you're trying to earn something you already have. You are enough. Not because you've reached perfection or figured everything out, but because you exist, you care, and you continue to grow. The challenge is not to become enough. It's to live like you already are. When anxiety takes over, it convinces you that worth must be earned. You measure your value by how productive you were today, by who approves of you, by how well things went. You turn your life into a scoreboard that's never satisfied. The smallest setback feels like failure, and every success fades too quickly to matter. This is the trap of conditional worth, the belief that you must prove your value through constant doing. But you can't quiet your mind by chasing validation. You quiet it by living each moment as proof that you are already enough. Being enough doesn't mean you stop growing or trying. It means you stop growing from a place of emptiness. You stop chasing goals to fill a void and start creating from a place of wholeness. You still work hard, but now you do it because you love what you're building, not because you're afraid of falling short. That's what it means to live with self-acceptance, to act from peace, not pressure. Every moment gives you a chance to practice this truth. You can treat yourself with the same respect you show others. You can look at your reflection and choose appreciation over criticism. You can take a deep breath and remind yourself that your worth didn't disappear because today was difficult. The more you practice this, the more your nervous system learns that it's safe to relax even when things aren't perfect. Anxiety thrives on self-doubt, but self-trust quiets it. Most of your anxious thoughts come from the belief that something is missing. You think peace will arrive once you fix yourself, your situation, or your future. But the more you chase that next thing, the further peace drifts away. The mind keeps moving. The finish line, living as proof that you are enough, means you stop waiting for peace and start creating it now. You learn to enjoy the moment you're in, even when it's imperfect. You stop postponing joy until you earn it. When you wake up in the morning, before your thoughts rush in, you have a brief moment of quiet awareness. That stillness is your true self, complete, steady, enough. The anxious voice enters soon after, telling you what's wrong, what's missing, what could go wrong today. But that voice is just noise built from habit. The real you is the awareness beneath it. When you return to that awareness throughout your day, by breathing, by noticing, by being present, you remember your worth. You remember that you don't need to prove it. Living as proof that you are enough is a practice of mindfulness in motion. It's choosing to slow down, to notice. It's recognizing that you can do ordinary things, like cooking a meal, sending an email, or talking to a friend, and still be living meaningfully. You don't have to constantly achieve something remarkable to have a valuable day. Sometimes peace is found in small moments. The way sunlight hits your face, the sound of laughter, the quiet satisfaction of being alive. Those moments are proof that you belong, that you matter, that your existence itself is enough. Anxiety tells you that you must fix yourself before you can rest. It convinces you that rest is laziness, that stillness is unproductive. But rest is not a reward, it's a right. Rest is what keeps you grounded enough to remember your worth. When you allow yourself to rest without guilt, you're telling your mind, I deserve peace even now. That message is one of the most powerful forms of healing. You might think that living as if you're enough means giving up ambition, but it's the opposite. It means your ambition becomes healthier. You stop working to prove your worth and start working to express it. You stop competing for validation and start creating from joy. That shift changes everything. It makes success feel lighter and failure less painful, because your identity isn't attached to the outcome anymore. You build this kind of strength by noticing how you speak to yourself. Most people are harshest toward themselves when they're struggling. The inner voice says, "You should be doing better," or "You'll never get it right." Those words don't motivate you, they drain you. If a friend came to you with the same struggle, you'd respond with patience and care. You'd tell them they're doing their best. Living as proof that you're enough means giving yourself the same grace. You become your own ally instead of your own critic. Anxiety fades in the presence of self-compassion. When you stop attacking yourself for being human, your body relaxes. You stop living on edge. You start realizing that you don't need to earn your right to breathe easy. You were born deserving of peace. The world may have convinced you otherwise, but that belief can be unlearned. Every time you choose kindness toward yourself, you rewrite that old programming. You remind your nervous system that it's safe to rest, safe to feel, safe to just be. There's a moment in healing when you realize that life doesn't have to be perfect to be good. You begin to appreciate progress over perfection. You celebrate small victories, the days you showed up, the moments you stayed calm, the times you tried again after failing. These are not small things. They are the quiet evidence that you are growing, that you are enough. You no longer need dramatic change to feel worthy. Small steps are proof of your strength. Living each moment as proof that you are enough also means being fully present with your emotion. When sadness appears, you don't push it away. When joy arises, you don't question it. When anxiety comes, you meet it with understanding. You let yourself feel without judgment. This is what emotional maturity looks like, not controlling feelings, but accepting them. Every emotion you experience is part of being human, and that humanity is what makes you whole. You can practice this even during difficult days. When you make a mistake, instead of spiraling into shame, take a breath and say, "I'm still worthy." When someone misunderstands you, remind yourself, "Their opinion doesn't define my value." When life feels uncertain, whisper, "I'm safe where I am." These small affirmations build self-trust. They remind your mind and body that you no longer need to prove your right to belong. Many people spend their entire lives waiting for external validation to confirm their worth. They chase success, approval, relationships, recognition, only to find that none of it quiets the noise inside. That's because worth is not something anyone can give you. It's something you decide to believe about yourself. The moment you stop outsourcing that belief, you gain true freedom. You become whole not because others see it, but because you do. When you live from this truth, you start experiencing life differently. You enjoy your work without being consumed by it. You connect with others without fear of judgment. You make mistakes and recover quickly. You take time for yourself without guilt. You don't live waiting for the next achievement to feel peace. You create peace as you go. You no longer chase moments of enoughness, you live them. Living as proof that you are enough is not a one-time realization, it's a daily practice. Some mornings you'll forget, you'll wake up and the anxious voice will return, telling you that you're falling behind, that you're not doing enough. That's okay. Each time that voice appears, you have a choice. You can believe it, or you can return to the truth. You can pause, breathe, and remind yourself, "I don't need to earn my worth. I am enough right now." That repetition builds new belief. You also begin to see others differently. When you live from this truth, you stop comparing. You stop measuring your worth against theirs. You recognize that everyone is on their own path, learning their own lessons, fighting their own silent battle. You start celebrating others' success without feeling smaller. You realize that someone else's light doesn't dim your own. The anxious habit of comparison loses power when you know you're enough. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is permission to exist without constant improvement. Growth will still happen naturally, but it will come from peace, not pressure. You'll find that the more you accept yourself, the easier it becomes to grow. Acceptance is not the end of growth, it's the soil where growth flourishes. When you feel safe within yourself, you have the strength to evolve without fear. Living as proof that you are enough is also about presence. Anxiety thrives on living in the future. What could go wrong? What's next? What might be missing? But when you focus on this moment, anxiety weakens. You start to notice that right now, in this exact second, you are safe, you are breathing, you are doing your best. That's enough. Life unfolds in the present. When you live here, you stop chasing what's already here. Sometimes, living like you're enough means slowing down when the world tells you to speed up. It means saying no when your body says it's tired. It means letting go of the need to prove anything to anyone. This kind of living takes courage because it goes against what society celebrates. But deep peace comes when you stop performing and start being. You realize that your life doesn't have to look extraordinary to be meaningful. The ordinary moments, lived with presence and gratitude, become extraordinary on their own. You might not notice it right away, but as you practice this, your anxious mind begins to soften. The endless pressure to fix yourself starts to dissolve. You begin to feel more grounded, more alive, more free. You wake up and no longer feel the weight of having to become someone else. You start to like who you already are. That quiet contentment is not arrogance, it's peace. It's the realization that you were never broken to begin with. So live each moment as proof that you are enough. Speak kindly to yourself. Celebrate your small wins. Rest when you need to. Laugh off, be present. Allow yourself to feel joy without guilt and sadness without shame. Each of these choices is a statement, a declaration to yourself and the world that you are already complete.